When we think about the ocean, our minds usually jump to the big stuff, right? Fish, whales, maybe some cool coral reefs. But as a marine researcher, I get to see a whole different world. The real foundation of life in the water is often totally invisible. It's this microscopic, living film that coats almost every single submerged surface. I like to call it the ocean's hidden garden. So today, let's explore what it is and why it's so incredibly important.
Okay, so most of us have probably heard of plankton, right? They're the famous drifters of the aquatic world, just floating around. But there's this whole other community that's just as important, the settlers, and that is Periphyton. See, unlike plankton, they don't just go with the flow. They find a spot, they attach, they colonize, and they build entire microscopic ecosystems on rocks, on plants, even on the bottom of a boat.
So what exactly is Periphyton? Well, it's not just one thing. Think of it more like a bustling miniature city. It's this super complex community made up of all sorts of stuff. Algae, microbes, bits of organic debris, all held together in this kind of slimy matrix that just clings to almost any surface you can find underwater.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, so it's just slime. And yeah, it looks like it. But trust me, this slime is one of the most important foundations of life in the water. So let's get into exactly why it's so critical.
In a lot of aquatic systems, especially in places like fast-moving streams where plankton just gets washed away, Periphyton is the main primary producer. It's what's turning sunlight into energy. It's also incredibly resilient. If there's a flood or some other disturbance, it bounces back really fast. And that stability makes it a totally reliable foundational layer of the entire food web.
This quote just nails its dual role perfectly. Periphyton isn't just food. It's not just a buffet for all those little bottom-dwelling creatures, what we call benthic fauna. It's also a physical home. That complex, slimy matrix gives them a place to hide. So it's basically a grocery store and an apartment complex all rolled into one for the little critters that then get eaten by bigger fish.
So how in the world do we actually study this stuff? How do we go from a slimy rock to real hard scientific data? Well, our journey doesn't start in some high-tech lab. Nope. It starts right out there in the field, at the water's edge. Believe it or not, the method is surprisingly low-tech. First, we put clean surfaces, things as simple as glass slides, out into the water. Then, we just wait. We give it about 2 or 3 weeks for that microscopic community to move in and start growing. After that, we carefully pull our slides out of the water and scrape all of that amazing life into a little sample jar. That's it. All right, so with our sample jars full, we head back from the field and into the lab. This little jar of what looks like murky, greenish-brown water, well, it holds all the secrets about the ecosystem's health. And now, it's time to unlock them. Back in the lab, we have a very precise workflow. We start by filtering a known amount of our sample to catch all the solid material. Then, we dry that material out and weigh it to get the biomass, which is basically just figuring out how much stuff, how much life was on our slide. We also do a chemical extraction to measure the chlorophyll, which tells us about its ability to photosynthesize. And then, my favorite part, we take a look under the microscope. So how does this all fit together? Well, each one of those lab steps is designed to turn that goopy, physical sample into powerful, useful data. It gives us a really clear, quantitative picture of what's actually going on in the water.
We use some really cool, high-precision tools to translate that greenish slime into hard numbers. An analytical balance gives us that total biomass, and an instrument called a spectrophotometer lets us measure chlorophyll by seeing how it absorbs light. And together, these numbers start to tell a story about just how productive and healthy that ecosystem really is.
Now, to make sure our data is super accurate, we use that spectrophotometer to create what's called a standard curve. Think of it like a ruler for our chemical measurements. It's a calibration tool. By comparing our sample's reading to this curve, we can figure out the exact amount of something like chlorophyll. It's how we get really reliable scientific results from what started as a simple scraping.
The data is absolutely crucial, don't get me wrong. But nothing, and I mean nothing, beats seeing this hidden world with your own eyes. The numbers tell us how much life is there, but the microscope, that tells us who is living there, and that's where it gets really amazing. And what a world it is. Seriously, that green slime just transforms into this universe of stunningly complex organisms. What you're looking at here are diatoms. They're single-celled algae that build these intricate, beautiful little shells out of silica, basically glass. On the left, you've got a species of amphora, and on the right, that elegant needle-like one is Cylindrotheca.
These microscopic architects, they are the true powerhouses of the Periphyton community.
Okay, so we've gone from the stream to the lab, from slime to identifying specific species. But what's the big takeaway here? Why does all of this super detailed work on a microscopic community matter so much in the grand scheme of things?
When you boil it all down, Periphyton acts as a living, breathing report card for our aquatic ecosystems. Think about it. Because these organisms are attached, they can't just swim away when conditions change. They are constantly experiencing and reacting to their environment. So by reading the Periphyton, we can literally read the health of the entire river or lake or estuary. And we learn to read this report card in a few different ways. The total biomass, that tells us how productive the whole system is. The chlorophyll concentration, that shows us its potential to create energy from sunlight. But the really telling part is the species we find. That composition reveals everything, from the water's flow rate and how much light is getting through, to the presence of specific nutrients or even pollutants. Different species thrive in different conditions, which makes them fantastic environmental indicators. So we went from a simple, slimy film on a rock all the way to a complex indicator of environmental health. The world of Periphytons just shows us how much incredible life exists just beneath the surface, stuff we usually overlook. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other vital secrets are hiding out there in plain sight, just waiting for us to take a closer look?